T-Roc is one of Volkswagen's most important models for years, representing the brand in the affordable style-conscious end of the fast-growing mid-sized SUV segment. Almost everything you can't see on this car comes from a Golf hatch, which is no bad thing. As for the stuff you'll admire in the driveway, well, it all looks satisfyingly fashionable.
Here's a very stylish compact SUV. You might be a little surprised to see that it's a Volkswagen, and a very important one. Welcome to the T-Roc. For years, Volkswagen's primary offering when it came to models in this sector was the Tiguan, but that crossover has been eased up market in recent times, leaving a space into which the brand is slotting not one but two new SUVs. One is the Polo-based T-Cross, but here our focus is a slightly larger Golf-based T-Roc. It's the funkiest model of this kind we've yet seen from the Wolfsburg maker. Like other Volkswagen Group models in this segment from Audi, Skoda and Seat, it campaigns against family hatchback-based SUVs in the class originated by Nissan's Qashqai and then popularised by just about every volume maker you can think of. The Volkswagen brand is a latecomer to the mainstream part of this sector, but it aims to set itself apart here with much trendier styling. Plus, apparently this car is designed to be fun to drive, and that's an attribute that most competitors claim, but almost none of them actually deliver. Will the T-Roc be different? We'll see. It's vitally important because its chosen segment is vitally important. SUVs already account for over 20% of all new car sales in Europe, a figure predicted to grow to nearly 35% in 5 years' time. In worldwide terms, Volkswagen expects that sales in the small SUV segment will nearly double to 10.6 million cars over the next 10 years. Hence the effort put into ensuring that the T-Roc has substance as well as style, this model claiming class-leading levels of media connectivity and safety, plus all the potential personalisation options that buyers in this class now demand. Sounds promising. Let's put it to the test. Are we having fun yet? Well, Volkswagen claims we should be, describing this as the SUV from the inventor of the GTI. This car's chassis development chief, Carsten Schebstadt, had just signed off on the playful Golf GTI Club Sport and Polo GTI models before he set to work on the T-Roc, and he says that his objective was to make this car the most agile handler in its class. Now, we've heard that kind of claim before, of course, and we've been disappointed. Crossovers of this kind are almost always unremarkable to drive. Can this one be different? Well, yes and no. Let's say right up front that this is not really any kind of SUV GTI, but it is a big improvement on most other models from this genre. The steering is quick to react and responsive. It features Volkswagen's progressive technology, which helps with corner turn-in. There's also a reasonable amount of grip, and the chassis delivers a decent blend of control and comfort, and that's helped by the stiff, sophisticated MQB technology it's based around. Is it quite as good an all-rounder as a more conventional Golf or a Polo? No, but it does get near to the standards those models set, and it's definitely closer in demeanour to a family hatch than to any kind of SUV, which translates into a very impressive showing against the competitors that this Volkswagen's up against. You'll want to know about engines. Well, with this model's SUV showroom stablemate, the Tiguan, that borrows a number of its power plants from the upper end of the Golf range. This T-Roc, on the other hand, turns to the lower end of the Golf lineup for its most popular units, with the headline offering being the 1-litre TSI petrol variant that we're trying here, provided in this car in its 115 PS state of tune and exclusively mated to front-wheel drive and 6-speed manual transmission. Volkswagen expects this engine to outsell all others in the T-Roc range by a considerable margin, and after some time at the wheel, it's obvious why. A diesel-like efficiency showing is matched by a pleasantly purposeful revvy note and a willingness to rev, as 62 mph is reached in 10.1 seconds en route to 116 miles an hour. If you want to go a little faster than that, then the brand will offer you the 150 PS version of its well-regarded 1.5 litre TSI Evo petrol unit, which is fitted out with efficient cylinder deactivation and which improves that sprint time to 8.4 seconds en route to 127 miles an hour. This variant can also be ordered in a form that combines a 7-speed DSG automatic gearbox with 4-motion 4-wheel drive. Go for the top petrol model, the 190 PS 2-litre TSI T-Roc, and you also have to have those two elements. This pricey but powerful derivative is able to make 62 miles an hour in 7.2 seconds en route to 134 miles an hour. There are a couple of diesel options too, the usual 115 PS 1.6 and 150 PS 2-litre TDI units, familiar from just about everything the company makes. Power plants that the brand believes will be of minority interest to typical T-Roc folk. With the 2-litre TDI variant, you'll be offered the choice to add in either DSG auto transmission or 4-motion 4-wheel drive. In the T-Roc 2-litre TDI 4-motion, 62 mph from rest takes 8.7 seconds en route to 124 miles an hour. As with the Golf, there are two suspension systems on offer, a straightforward torsion beam setup on the front-driven models and a more sophisticated package with a multi-link rear end for the 4-motion variants. Either way, if you want to enhance things further in that regard, then there's also the option of DCC, dynamic chassis control, with 3 modes, sport, comfort and normal, and that will supposedly allow you to set the ride up to suit the road that you're on and the mood you're in. Now, to be frank, our experience of this setup is that the normal setting is the best compromise, and it's the one that you'll leave the car in nearly all the time, which to some extent rather defeats the object of paying extra for DCC in the first place. If you like the idea of variable driving modes, the optional driving profile selection package might be a better bet, and that's one of those setups that tweaks the steering feel and the throttle response, plus the gear change timings if you have the DSG automatic transmission fitted. Here there are eco, normal and sport settings, plus an individual option allows you to tailor various parameters to suit your own individual preferences. Now, in this section we've touched a few times on 4-motion 4-wheel drive, so let's tell you a little more about that. Volkswagen describes this as a permanent setup, but that doesn't mean that if you have it, all 4 wheels will always be being driven. As usual with systems of this sort on cars of this kind, forward propulsion will come conventionally from the front axle during regular motoring, with the rear axle partly decoupled until it's brought into play by an electronically controlled multi-plate clutch when lack of traction demands it. As on a Tiguan, 4-motion is controlled by an active control dial below the gear stick, which when turned to the left offers 2 on-road profiles, street and snow. The T-Roc 4-motion can handle light off-piste work too though, and for that it'll be necessary to turn the dial to the right and select the available off-road mode, which will automatically program all of this car's throttle response, tractional responses and gear changes to work better for use off the beaten track. You can further adapt these settings via an additional off-road individual setting. Of course, none of this is enough to turn this Volkswagen into any sort of mud plugger, but thanks to a reasonable 161mm of ground clearance, this model could be quite a useful tool on muddy tracks or when towing, fitted with the right tyres. The off-road stats are better than most fashion-conscious crossovers can quote too, with an approach angle of 16.4 degrees, a departure angle of 18.8 degrees, and a ramp breakover angle of 12.8 degrees. None of which will be very much interest to the typical T-Roc buyer, someone who won't need a powerful engine or 4-wheel drive. Of more importance to those people will be attributes like this T-Roc's easy urban manoeuvrability. There's an 11.1 metre turning circle, and when parking it's easy to judge where all 4 corners of the car are. Plus there's a slick 6-speed manual gearbox, reassuring brakes, and with all the engines, punchy mid-range acceleration. Refinement's impressive too, provided that on this 1-litre model you don't mind the rather endearing, vigorous 3-cylinder soundtrack that's delivered under hard acceleration. In short, as we said at the beginning, it's all rather Golf-like, and for a car of this kind, that can only be a good thing. The T-Roc's extravert styling is certainly very different to that of Volkswagen's conservative Tiguan, It's smaller too, the compact 4.2 metre length, not only 252mm shorter than its SUV stablemate, but also 21mm shorter than a Volkswagen Golf. The Wolfsburg brand's head of design, Klaus Bischoff, and his team have gone for a wide and long stance allied to a relatively low roofline and a steeply raked C-pillar. Provided you dress it up a bit, certainly makes a statement. Especially here at the front, where an expansive bonnet flows down into a slim, wide radiator grille, flanked by headlamps which can optionally be specified with full LED beams. Now, they're low-profile shapings made possible by the way that the daytime running lights, which can also switch colour to function as indicators, sit separately in these very prominent lower bumper housings. Further down, there's the obligatory lowered silvered skid plate to reinforce this model's SUV credentials. From the side, the short overhangs deliver a squat, chunky profile that's given a bit of interest by this chrome styling feature that extends from the A-pillars, runs over the entire side roofline and widens as it culminates in the swept-back coupe-like C-pillars. The rear haunches are given emphasis by this short character line that curves over the rear door handle, and rugged-looking dark plastic protects the side sills and the wheel arches that shroud rims of 16, 17, 18 or 19 inches in size. And it says much for Volkswagen's history of rather reserved design that this is the first time the brand's done anything as comparatively daring as to offer a car with a contrast-coloured roof. That's available in white, red, brown or, as here, in black. If you really want to stand out, you can get these colour-coded wheel rims too. Moving to the rear, a three-level structure aims to give the T-Roc a lower, wider and more sporting look. At the top on the left and right, the tailgate's framed by these chromed C-pillar accents. In the centre are tail lamps that feature LED illumination on top models. And further down, there's an intricately styled bumper that incorporates these honeycombed, trimmed corner cutouts with red reflectors above them. A further faux skid plate marks out the lower centre section. More important though, of course, is the stuff you can't see, specifically the stiffer, more sophisticated Golf-style MQB platform underpinnings that lie beneath these precise, carefully contoured lines. So, plenty of effort's gone into the exterior design. The cabin architecture isn't quite as adventurous, although in this mid-range design variant, attempts have been made to lift things with coloured flashings. They're available either in energetic orange, turmeric yellow, or as in this case, Ravenna blue. Now, these frame the centre stack, they cover the dash pad and extend into the door cards, and they won't suit those with overly conservative taste. It does help to have them though, and for a couple of reasons. Firstly, with everything simply trimmed in the usual dark plastic, the interior of a lower order T-Roc model can feel somewhat uninspired. And secondly, the vibrant colours also distract your attention from the fact that the soft touch plastics that are used with such style in a comparable Golf or Tiguan are quite noticeable by their absence. Now, Volkswagen says that younger buyers won't care about this. We're not so sure. That's a pity because there's otherwise relatively little to criticise here, with quality switchgear borrowed from Golf and Tiguan models, well-judged ergonomics orientated towards the driver, and decent build quality too from the Portuguese factory. That's the same one that builds the brand's Chiran MPV. A highlight absent on this test car is the optional active info display. That's another feature that's effective in deflecting attention away from some of this hard, brittle surfacing. Now, we're getting used to this kind of thing from various brands now. A 12.3-inch TFT screen that completely replaces the conventional instrument binnacle dials and which can be configured to show analog look dials, a full screen sat-nav and various stages in between. Elsewhere in the range, you get this usual conventional dial arrangement separated by a trip computer display. What your dealer salesperson will probably most want to emphasise though is the big advantage in media connectivity that this T-Roc enjoys in comparison to some of its rivals. A high-set, glass-fronted 8-inch infotainment screen dominates the centre stack on all models, upgraded here to the Discover navigation system that's fitted to the plusher variants and which is optional lower down the range. Whatever display you choose, the touchscreen effectively deals with the usual DAB stereo, Bluetooth Bluetooth phone and car informational functions, and with virtually all the trim levels, it's embellished with Volkswagen's clever App Connect setup. Now this is the starting point for the brand's CarNet connectivity system, and it's also the key tool for bringing the best functions of your smartphone into this car via the Apple CarPlay, the Android Auto and MirrorLink systems. Once this software is activated, you're all set to enjoy things you maybe never thought you'd be able to access on the move. For example, Apple CarPlay supports Spotify, the music streaming service, the video calling app Skype, and Stitcher too, which offers a variety of radio shows and podcasts. Android Auto works with a variety of apps, including instant messages, WhatsApp and Kik, and Google Hangouts too. Volkswagen also adds to these with a further range of clever apps that you're free to download. Take the MirrorLink Cam Connect app, for example, which enables the infotainment display to be connected to a GoPro camera, which can be mounted elsewhere in the vehicle, so you can easily keep an eye on kids in the back. Specify the upgraded Discover navigation system we have here, and you also get a brilliantly helpful CarNet Guide and Inform setup, which gives you in-car online access to a whole range of useful journeying information. So everything from traffic news, weather and news feeds to information on fuel and parking prices in your place of destination. Enough on infotainment. What else might you need to know about the front cabin of this T-Roc? Well, getting settled behind the 3-spoke wheel is easy thanks to the wide range of adjustment on offer. The comfort seat design you get on most models is, well, comfortable, and headroom is much better than it is in a Golf thanks to the 81mm higher roofline. That helps rearward visibility too. The chunky C-pillar isn't as obstructive as it is with a comparable Audi Q2, for instance. Another nice touch is the way that the key can be personalised to set driving preferences, such as favourite radio stations and your preferred dynamic settings. As for in-cabin storage, well, you do without an overhead compartment for your sunglasses, but otherwise not much else is lacking. The door pockets and the glove box are of a reasonable size, and provided you avoid entry-level trim, you get a drawer beneath the driver's seat too. There is a storage area in front of the gear stick with twin overhead USB slots, while the provision of an electronic handbrake frees up space for twin cup holders and a coin tray with a deep tool storage box just behind. Now, time to take a seat in the back. The doors open reasonably wide, and the T-Roc has a slightly higher rear seating position than a Golf hatch, which makes access easier and which will help you if you regularly have to take child seats or booster cushions in and out. Once inside, the differences between this model and its Tiguan showroom stablemate are readily apparent. As you'd expect, the shorter body length makes quite a difference to legroom here, and nor is there the sliding seat base that you get in a Tiguan to improve things in that regard. You might expect headroom to be a touch restricted too, given the coupe-like rear styling and the fact also that rear passengers sit 46mm higher than those at the front. As it turns out, a couple of 6-foot passengers can just about sit behind a couple of equally lanky front seat occupants with some degree of comfort. Accommodating 3 reasonably sized people back here will be more of a challenge though, thanks to this prominent centre transmission tunnel. If there are only 2 of you, you'll be able to use this central armrest, which, like these seat-back storage pockets, is a standard feature, providing you avoid entry-level trim. The armrest folds to reveal a couple of integrated cup holders, and it covers a rear ski hatch flap through which backseat passengers can, if necessary, reach to retrieve items in the boot. A 12-volt socket is provided back here, although many might feel in this day and age a USB port might be more useful. Finally, let's take a look out back. Now, there is an adjustable height boot floor that you can lower if necessary for taller items. As for actual boot capacity, well, that varies a little depending on the drive layout you've chosen. It's rated at 366 litres for a front-driven model like this one, or 324 litres in a 4Motion equipped 4-wheel drive variant. More than that would have been possible had Volkswagen copied some rivals in deleting the provision of a space-saver spare wheel. Laudably though, the brand continues, like us, to see provision of that feature as a priority, although you will have to do without it if you specify the optional Beats audio system. Now, just mentioned the through-loading hatch in the rear seat back. Most models get that, allowing you to poke through longer items like skis from the boot. With a 60-40 split rear seats, totally flat, up to 1,290 litres of space can be freed up. T-Roc pricing starts at around £19,000 and runs up to around £35,000, but it's likely that most buyers will be paying from just under £25,000 for a decently spec'd version of this car. There are 5 trim levels, with S and SE variants as usual being the starting point, but you have to stretch up to this mid-range design spec if you want the eye-catching personalisation elements that you'll see shown in the brochures. SEL and R-Line variants round off the lineup, and overall 3/4 of sales will be to private customers. That's one reason why Volkswagen expects 80% of buyers to opt for TSI petrol engines in this car, with many of them likely to choose the entry-level 1-litre unit that we're trying here. Now, not long ago, the overriding sales emphasis with an SUV of this kind would have been on diesel power. Now, looking in detail at the range, there's a premium of just under £1,800 to progress from this volume 1-litre 115 PS petrol power plant to a 150 PS 1.5 litre TSI Evo petrol unit. Now, this pokier engine can be ordered either in straightforward manual front-driven form or in a variant that combines DSG automatic transmission and 4-motion 4-wheel drive. The top 2-litre TSI T-Roc only comes in DSG 4-motion form. In the TDI diesel range, you'll find either a front-driven manual 1.6 litre 115 PS model or a 150 PS 2-litre TDI variant. Go for the latter and you'll be able to specify either DSG auto transmission or 4-motion 4-wheel drive, although not both at the same time. Those features respectively costing around £1,600 more. Now, before we get on to considering direct rivals from other brands, we should probably consider the T-Roc's positioning from a Volkswagen range perspective. Now, if you're thinking of this car as a more interesting alternative to a Golf hatch, then you'll be pleased to find that the premium to upgrade yourself into this SUV isn't that great. Now, direct comparisons between the two models aren't all that easy to make because the trim levels and the engine outputs are slightly different in each case, but where they can be made, a T-Roc costs only around £500 more. If you're thinking of a T-Roc as an alternative to the next SUV up in the Volkswagen range, the Tiguan, it's even more difficult to make comparisons here, and that's because that model's volume petrol lineup is rather different. In rough terms though, if you think of the bigger Tiguan costing around £4,000 more than an equivalent T-Roc, you won't be too far out. So how does Volkswagen T-Roc pricing pictured against directly comparable rivals? Well, let's see. Now let's start by defining the fact that in terms of competitors, we're talking here of C-segment Qashqai classed SUVs based on family hatchbacks. The Wolfsburg brand strategy is that its smaller T-Cross model will more specifically target the cheaper B-segment SUVs like Nissan's Juke and Seat's Arona. As for the T-Roc, well, you'd think that its closest competition would come from the similarly sized Volkswagen Group compact SUVs that already compete in this class. Audi's Q2, Seat's Attica and Skoda's Karoq, all of which share the same engineering underneath. The Attica and the Karoq cost around about the same as equivalent T-Roc variants, but they offer a little more interior space to try to compensate for less avant-garde styling and a slight reduction in badge equity. The Audi has a more upmarket feel, but it requires a model-for-model premium of around £1,200. As for other alternatives, well, it depends which part of the T-Roc lineup you're shopping in. Lower to mid-range models are really alternatives to volume brand family-orientated compact SUVs like Nissan's Qashqai, Renault's Kadjar, Peugeot's 3008, the Mini Countryman, Kia's Sportage, Hyundai's Tucson and Citroen's C5 Aircross. Maybe also Jeep's Renegade and Compass models, Vauxhall's Mokka X and Grandland X, the Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross, the Subaru XV and the Honda HR-V. If you want a little more interior space, the Ford Kuga and the Mazda CX-5 might also come into the equation for much the same kind of money. For us though, a really more direct match would be something in a sector that's sportier flashier and more dynamic looking, like Toyota CHR. Now, of all the models I just mentioned, the Kia and the Hyundai alternatives could easily save you £1,000 or so over this Volkswagen, but otherwise all of those cars are available in much the same £20,000 to £25,000 bracket, where, as we said, most T-Roc variants will be sold. Now, if you have more than that to spend on a car of this kind and you're considering what's on offer in the pricier part of the T-Roc range, then you could be looking at really high-spec versions of the competitor models I just mentioned, or alternatively, you might be browsing amongst the premium brand contenders in this class that tend to sit mainly in the £27,000 to £35,000 bracket. So here we're talking about SUVs like the Mercedes GLA, the Audi Q3, the BMW X1, the Volvo XC40, and possibly also the Lexus NX. Volkswagen's worked hard to try to ensure that upper spec T-Roc variants feel suitably plush enough to take on cars of this kind, but points out that the Tiguan model is probably better targeted at aspiring models of that sort. If, having considered all of that, you conclude it is a T-Roc that you really want, then you're going to need to know just how generous the Wolfsburg brand has been when it comes to standard equipment. So let's take a look at that now. Even entry-level S-trim gets you 16-inch alloy wheels and the composition media system with its 8-inch touchscreen. Now, via this display, you will access a 6-speaker DAB stereo system with Bluetooth phone connectivity, an SD card reader, and a USB connection. You get an old-fashioned CD player too, which isn't always included as standard on cars these days. Volkswagen also throws in its clever progressive steering system, which helps to reduce wheel turns in low-speed manoeuvring and makes fast cornering more direct too. Plus, there are auto headlamps and wipers, an auto-dimming rear-view mirror, 2-zone climate control, an adjustable height boot floor, and a proper space-saver spare wheel. That's along with an impressive roster of basic safety equipment that we'll come on to in a few moments. Plus, you get all the features that you'd expect at this price point, things like driver's seat height adjustment, all-round electric windows and mirrors, and a multifunction trip computer. Most buyers, though, will want at least to find the relatively affordable extra premium to upgrade themselves to one of the mid-range SE variants, a trim package that includes most of the features that you'd ideally want. That means things like front and rear parking sensors, power folding mirrors, an alarm, and the radar-driven ACC adaptive cruise control system, which will make highway travel so much easier. SE spec practicalities include a through-loading ski hatch in the back seat, front and rear centre armrests, and under-seat drawers up front. Plus, the kids will thank you for the provision of extra USB sockets and seat-back storage pockets. The SE models look smarter too, courtesy of larger 17-inch alloy wheels and black roof rails. And they'll feel nicer inside as well, thanks to decorative dashboard trim inserts and leather trim for the steering wheel and the gear knob. Plus, there are more supportive comfort spec front seats too. Oh, and at this level in the lineup, you get more from the composition media system thanks to the inclusion of Volkswagen's CarNet App Connect package, which allows you to link in your smartphone via the Apple CarPlay, Android Auto and MirrorLink systems. To get yourself a really stylish T-Roc model, though, you'll have to progress at least to the midpoint in the model hierarchy, the design spec that we're trying here, which is the level in the lineup that Volkswagen expects the majority of potential customers to favour. Now here, you'll be offered a standard contrast-coloured roof that can be finished in either white, red, brown, or, as in this instance, black to suit the major paint shade that you've chosen, with the chosen shade also extending onto the front A-pillars and the door mirror housings. To complement that, design variants also come with customisable dash pads in orange, yellow, or as in this case, in blue. Rear tinted glass, sport style bumpers with silver highlights, smarter, colour customisable Mayfield style alloy wheels, and chromed trapezoidal exhaust pipes complete the effect. While inside there's ambient lighting with light strips in the front doors. Want to go even further? Well, if budget's permitted, we'd want to look at the top SEL and R-Line variants, because with those flagship versions, you get the real niceties. Now, these include sports seats, larger 18-inch wheels, front fog lights, and the driving profile selection driving mode system, which allows you to tweak steering and throttle response to suit your preferences. R-Line derivatives get a dynamic body kit too, and with both these top trim levels, you get Volkswagen's state-of-the-art infotainment hardware hardware. Now that means a Discover navigation version of the 8-inch center stack infotainment monitor, which features voice activation and works in concert with an active info display. That's a 12.3-inch TFT setup that completely replaces the usual instrument binnacle dials with fully customizable menus and information. Providing you avoid entry-level trim, both the active info display and the sat-nav equipped Discover system are optional, and they're well worth adding to your chosen spec if you're shopping lower down the range. The Discover package is supplied complete with Volkswagen's useful CarNet Guide and Inform setup, which gives you in-car online access to a whole range of useful journeying information, everything from traffic news, weather and news feeds to information on fuel and parking prices in your place of destination. Plus, there's the CarNet Security and Service system, which allows you to monitor various aspects of your T-Roc from your smartphone, and which incorporates an eCall emergency service to summon help if you have an accident. With the Security and Service setup, you'll get all kinds of ongoing data about your car and your handset, plus you'll even know if the vehicle's been driven out of a designated area should you lend it out. Now that's all nice to have, but if you're buying this car, you're likely to be someone who is very style and fashion conscious. So let's talk you through the ways that you can really make this T-Roc your own once you've decided on the trim level you want. Now let's start with this contrast colour roof. That's a feature that some rivals restrict to really pricey variants. Now here, a black contrast roof like this one is optional across the range, provided you avoid entry-level trim, although you can't have it in any other colours unless you go for this design spec. For paint on the main bodywork, there is as usual the option of various solid, metallic or pearl effect paint shades. Now you might want to complement all that by adding in wheels with coloured spokes, like the 17-inch Mayfield rims with Atlantic blue flashings that we have here. Black, orange and silver spokes are also available with the 17-inch wheels, while the 18 inches come with a choice of silver finishes. The wheels can feature red brake calipers if you've gone for an SEL model, and you've specified the optional Sport Pack, which also gives you front sport seats, stainless steel pedals, a black roof lining and a leather-trimmed 3-spoke multifunction steering wheel. Across the T-Roc range, there's also the option of full Vienna leather upholstery if you want it. As for extra cost driving stuff, well, more enthusiastic T-Roc drivers will want to look at the DCC, Dynamic Chassis Control setup, which allows you to alter the ride to suit the road you're on and the mood you're in. It's a better alternative than the firmer Sport suspension option, and it can work through the various settings of another dynamic option, the driving profile selection system I mentioned earlier, which gives you 4 preset modes to alter steering feel and throttle response. Now you might also want to look at the Park Assist feature, which is able to automatically steer you into the tightest spaces, and this can also work with an optional rear view camera. Other optional niceties include a heated steering wheel, side running boards, an electric tailgate, a panoramic sunroof and a winter pack which can warm the windscreen washer jets along with the front seats. Surprisingly though, you can't have keyless entry. Further down the range, you might also want to add SEL trim features like full LED headlights, front fog lamps and silver roof rails. As for practicalities, well, we want to look at the usual mud flaps and carpet mats and the range of roof bars, roof boxes and carriers for things like bicycles, skis and snowboards. There are fixed and detachable tow bars too, and for the boot you can get various bespoke load liners, a luggage restraint net and a dog guard. Now we'll also return for a moment to the issue of infotainment. Provided you avoided entry-level trim, you can add voice activation to the standard composition media system if required, plus there's the option of a wireless smartphone charger. We would additionally be tempted by the optional 6-speaker 400-watt Beats sound pack, although a little put off by the fact that specifying that means you have to forego the standard space-saver spare wheel. Now we'll also mention that having the App Connect package, which which is standard above entry-level trim, means you'll be able to download 2 very useful Volkswagen apps for in-car use. The Media Control app allows passengers to control the composition media system using their smartphones or tablets, so kids in the back, for example, can find their favourite radio station and then respond to bellowed adult commands to turn it down. And if you've got one of those natty GoPro cameras and you use an Android phone, you can keep a better eye on them too once you've downloaded the Cam Connect app, which can beam a picture of the rear cabin onto the centre dash screen. On to safety, an area where Volkswagen claims class leadership with this model. All T-Rocs get twin front, side and curtain airbags, though unfortunately you have to do without the driver's knee bag that you'll find on the Tiguan. There are ISOFIX child seat fastenings, a tyre pressure loss indicator and anti-whiplash front head restraints. In addition, across the range, the Wolfsburg brand's installed a clever automatic post-collision braking system, which automatically brakes the car down to 6 miles an hour after a collision. So if, say, someone hits you and understandably you go to pieces, the car will automatically sort itself out. And we also applaud the standard fitment of a lane assist system, which will automatically steer you back into lane if you drift out of it. This not only helps with long or highway trips, but it also minimises risks posed by dangerous oncoming traffic on country roads. Just think how many lives could such a system have saved if it had been more widely available before now. Also standard on all T-Rocs is a front assist system that at speed scans the road ahead as you drive for potential accident hazards and warns you if one's detected and automatically brakes if necessary. You get the same kind of functionality at urban speeds too, as part of a city emergency braking system, which is included as part of the front assist package. This setup also includes predictive pedestrian protection that specifically searches for pedestrians who might be about to step out in front of you, and if necessary can initiate braking to avoid them. On top of this, there are all the usual electronic systems to try to ensure that neither of these features will ever be needed, and that means ESC stability control, an ASR traction control system and another EDL electronic differential lock system. This is there to facilitate smooth starts on split friction road surfaces, say if one side of the car is on wet leaves, for example. There's ABS braking, of course, and panic stops will be advertised to following motorists by automatically activating hazard warning lights. Plus, hill hold assist will stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions. In models with Discover navigation, you also get the eCall emergency service I mentioned earlier, which automatically summons help if you have an accident. And the Discover package also includes a dynamic road sign display feature, which pictures speed signs as you pass them and then displays them on the central infotainment screen. From mid-range design spec upwards, there's also a driver alert system which monitors your reactions for drowsiness and prompts you to stop for restorative coffee if lethargy is detected. And if your T-Roc has the DSG auto gearbox and ACC adaptive cruise control fitted, it can also feature 2 more clever systems. Traffic jam assist allows this Volkswagen to drive itself in low-speed traffic queues at up to 37 miles an hour using the lane assist technology to keep the car in lane. It sounds futuristic, but if you have to regularly commute in stop-and-go traffic, that is a feature that you'll really come to depend on. The second system that's designed to work with DSG and ACC is Emergency Assist, and that's a setup that detects when the driver is incapable of controlling the vehicle, say in the event of a heart attack or an extreme bout of illness. In a situation like that, the hazard lights would automatically be activated and the vehicle would be brought to a controlled stop within its lane. If you want to go further, there's the option of high beam assist, which will automatically dip your headlights for you at night, and a pre-crash preventative occupant protection system, which senses when an impact's imminent and then braces the car to better withstand it by instantly closing the windows. Now, another option is the blind spot monitor. That's a feature that alerts you if you're just about to dangerously pull out to overtake when there's a car in your blind spot. Now, in combination with this feature, there's also a rear traffic alert setup, which warns you of oncoming traffic when you're reversing out of a parking space. Okay, let's assume that you are amongst the growing number of buyers switching into a fashionable little SUV like this one from a conventional family hatch. So in this case, you'll be moving from a Golf into this T-Roc. What will the running cost penalty be for that higher set driving position and those more fashionable looks? Well, to answer that, let's consider what's predicted to be the best-selling T-Roc engine, the 1-litre TSI petrol unit that we're trying here. It manages 55.4 mpg on the combined cycle and 117 grams per kilometre of CO2, returns that until recently a diesel model would have struggled to reach in this class. Now that's not much more than about 5% behind a comparable Volkswagen Golf, and that's aided by the fact that this T-Roc's curb weight is less than 60 kilos more than its conventional hatchback stablemate. To give you some perspective on that showing, well, let's tell you that a typical volume contender in this class, a car like Nissan's Qashqai 1.2 litre DIGT, is about 10% thirstier and dirtier. So yes, a T-Roc makes an awful lot of sense in this 1 litre form. Now true, you could get 10 miles per gallon more and put out 10 grams per kilometre less by opting for the alternative 1.6 litre TDI diesel derivative, but we don't think many likely buyers will want to. These people likely to reason, as we would, that those gains will be more than offset by that TDI variant's higher purchase premium and by the pricier fuel that it'll need to run on. And even more of the same argument applies to the 2-litre TDI T-Roc diesel derivative, which in 4Motion form delivers 56.5 mpg and 132 grams per kilometre of CO2. Arguably a wiser way to get yourself 150 PS in this car is to choose the 1.5 litre TSI Evo petrol model, which in front-driven guise manages 53.3 mpg on the combined cycle and 121 grams per kilometre of CO2. And those figures are hardly affected at all if you opt for the DSG Auto gearbox, although of course they will take quite a hit if you add in the 4Motion four-wheel drive system. A cylinder-on-demand system that allows this power plant to cut down to 2 cylinders under light to medium throttle loads is key in enabling it to better the comparable diesel variant CO2 showing. If you don't really care about fuel and CO2 returns though, and you just want ultimate power in your T-Roc, then the top auto-only 2-litre TSI 4Motion petrol derivative manages 41.5 mpg on the combined cycle and 155 grams per kilometre of CO2. In short, it's a pretty competitive set of stats made possible by a whole range of efficiency measures and the relatively lightweight of the sophisticated MQB modular transverse matrix platform that underpins all volume Volkswagen models these days. To build on that, the brand is constantly further refining its range of what it calls Blue Motion technology tweaks, a portfolio of eco-minded elements that include all the usual features, things like brake energy recuperation and a start-stop system that cuts the engine when you don't need it, when you're stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. If your T-Roc has the DSG automatic gearbox, it'll also offer a coasting function that at cruising speeds will disconnect the gearbox, leaving the engine to idle until you next need it. The TDI power plants get a selective catalytic reduction filter to cut down on nitrous oxide, and like most modern diesels, use a urea-based solution called AdBlue that's injected into the exhaust gas stream to help clean up emissions. Now that liquid is stored in a 12-litre tank mounted at the rear beneath the boot, and this will need topping up as part of regular servicing. You can also monitor the status of the AdBlue level via the dashboard display. So the technology's there, but in day-to-day ownership across the range, does it actually achieve the returns that Volkswagen's promising? Well, that's a fair question, given all the controversy in recent times over the company's quoted fuel figures. We'll answer that by suggesting that a careful T-Roc owner might be able to get close to the official stats, but only if he or she were to fully use all of the efficiency tools that this car makes available, and there are plenty of those. As you'd expect, there's a gear change recommendation feature in the instrument binnacle's central display screen, and if you have a variant with the driving profile selection system fitted, there's an eco option that focuses all of the car systems on maximum frugality. That is just the start though. Across the range, the centre dash infotainment screen includes a Think Blue trainer in its car section, and that's a display that gives you 3 circular dials which help with different areas of driving efficiency. Now the centre one has 2 blue arcs in its outer ring, and you have to keep within these by braking and accelerating carefully. If you do, you'll achieve a higher so-called blue driving score. That's rated on a scale of 0 to 100, and it's shown in the left-hand circle or graphically via a separately selectable blue score overview. Do well here and the average fuel consumption figure shown in the right-hand circle will of course rise, and a touch of that round graphic will take you to a graph which shows your average fuel consumption over the last 30 minutes. There's also the option of accessing a series of Think Blue fuel-saving tips, although to be frank, some of these are rather blindingly obvious. They're things like think ahead while driving and drive in the highest possible gear. Opt for a top model with the active info dash display, and you can also select an efficiency branded set of virtual gauges for the instrument binnacle, which duplicate the center and right hand dials of the Think Blue trainer screen, and those are brought right into your line of sight. Can you be bothered with all this? Well, if you can't, it's absolutely no good complaining that the quoted running cost figures don't match those you actually achieve. The other cost-related facts surrounding this Volkswagen, though, are rather more straightforward. You can expect some of the highest residuals available in the class, though, as with any fashionable product, exact levels of long-term depreciation are difficult to predict. We should also give you a feel for your potential insurance costings. This 1-litre TSI 115 PS model is rated at Group 11E. Go for the 1.5-litre TSI Evo petrol engine, and it's Group 16E or 18E. Depending on spec. For the top 2-litre TSI 4Motion petrol version, you're looking at Group 22E. And for a 2-litre TDI 150 PS 4Motion diesel variant, it'll be Group 19E. As for servicing, well, as usual with Volkswagen models, there's a choice of either fixed or flexible maintenance packages. So you will choose the fixed approach if you cover less than 10,000 miles a year, and with this, the car will typically be looked at every 12 months. If your daily commute is more than 25 miles and your T-Roc will regularly be driven on longer distance journeys, then you'll be able to work with a flexible regime that in the first 2 years of ownership could see you travelling up to 20,000 miles or waiting up to 24 months before a garage visit. A single inspection service every year or 20,000 miles will be required thereafter, whichever comes sooner. And warranties, well, the standard package is 3 years and 60,000 miles, and we can't really see why Volkswagen couldn't extend that mileage limit to 100,000 miles, since that's what you get on its mechanically very similar Caddy model. Doing that, though, of course, wouldn't give Volkswagen dealers so much of an opportunity to sell extended warranty packages. There's one for 4 years and 75,000 miles, or if you plan to see a bit more of the world in your T-Roc, there's a 5-year 90,000 mile package. Whatever your decision, the car will come with 3 years of pan-European roadside assistance that has no mileage restriction. The paintwork warranty lasts for 3 years, and as you'd expect, this SUV is protected by a 12-year anti-corrosion package. As Volkswagen well knows, this is the kind of car it needs to make to satisfy the mainstream part of the current fickle, fashion-led SUV market. It's curious then that it's taken the Wolfsburg maker such a lengthy period to get around to bringing us such a model. For too long, the brand was represented in the Qashqai class only by the rather conservative and not especially affordable Tiguan. Now at last, the company's dealers have something really credible to offer to buyers who once would have been satisfied with an ordinary Golf or Focus-style family hatch, but now want something similarly sized but a bit more interesting. Is that what this is? If you strip away, after all the funky bodywork and the cabin personalisation, what you've got here is a slightly less efficient but slightly more expensive Golf. But then you could say similar things of just about any other contender in this segment. It's all about giving the market what it wants. And with the T-Roc, Volkswagen has done just that. Are there problems? Well, interior space perhaps, but then if you wanted that in a compact Volkswagen SUV, you'd probably stretch to a Tiguan. Surprisingly, in a Volkswagen, there is also the issue that some of the cabin trimming could feel a little more upmarket. It's something that's particularly obvious in variants lower down the range. In the plusher models, there's enough technology provided to make this less noticeable. These top derivatives are quite pricey though, and that brings into focus the fact that amongst rivals in this segment, there are plenty of slightly cheaper alternatives. Most of those, though, do lack this T-Roc's want one factor. And we do think that a significant number of buyers in this segment will want one of these. It's not quite the SUV GTI that its maker thinks it is, but it's a good deal better to drive than most of the alternatives that you might be considering. And while at the same time it delivers the kind of emotive looks that have never previously featured on a mainstream Volkswagen model. Striking, sporty and confident, the T-Roc is the kind of car the company should have offered us years ago. And it's certainly the kind of car it needs to rebuild its fortunes right now.